What is up, Trailblazers? Welcome back to the channel if you've been here before, and welcome to anyone new if you're just checking out the videos for your first time. So, as part of my character review series, I'm going to be reviewing our standard banner lightning element healer character, Bailu. She's of the abundance path, and she's a bit of an interesting one, not just because design and art wise she seems to make no sense being placed as a lightning element character, but also that she's a healing focused unit who's going to do next to 0 damage and act as a full blown defensive utility slot. So as always, as part of the review, I'll start with the kit, including her abilities, traces, and eidolons, and then I'll follow that up with build options and finalise with a section on team synergy and comps. If you don't know, Bailu is one of the only 2 healers that we will have on launch, and she'll be the only 5-star healer, and so doing a discussion video on a healer character in a turn-based combat game is actually really important, but there has to be some nuance to it, because if you've ever played a turn-based game, something like Final Fantasy X or Persona 5, a healer can be absolutely crucial to clearing certain content, and there are some healers who perform in those games leaps and bounds better over other people depending on their whole kit. But with that said, we are getting the other healer, Natasha, for free, and so a lot of people will be questioning whether Bailu is worth the resources if you pull for her. So today's video is going to focus on emphasising what makes Bailu so unique. As you will see, and I can't stress this enough, her kit is 100% healing focused. There are some people who do the Honkai Star Rail to Genshin comparisons for some reason. I get it because it's the same publisher, but question mark. But in Genshin, people will say that healers are underutilized and that Bailu is the Honkai Star Rail version of QIQI. I kind of feel that's a really odd comparison to make because A, this isn't Genshin, it's a turn-based combat game, so the quote-unquote meta that applies there doesn't apply here. You don't have iframing and dodging in a turn-based game, and even in Genshin, for example, the concept changed to make healers necessary, so things like Wolf Lords or Bloom comps came out way after QIQI's release. QIQI, I'm not going to do a Genshin character review, but you know, she's an ice character that deals physical damage. Like, she just wasn't a good character, but just because Bailu is short and looks a bit similar, I guess, I don't like the comparison that if you get Bailu, it's a bad pull because QIQI didn't do well in Genshin. It's not even apples and oranges, it's like apples to cans of Coke. It's 2 complete different situations, so the comparison shouldn't be made. Anyway, with that said, let's get into her kit. One thing you need to bear in mind as we go through the kit explanation is that she scales off of HP. Instead of starting with her normal attack, we do need to first explain her talent, as it has a mechanic unique to Bailu's kit called Invigorate. And Invigorate is actually applied through her ultimate or her technique, it's not applied through her talent, but if an ally is invigorated, her talent will increase her slot efficiency. So her talent, God Full of Elixir, has 2 effects, and the percent stated below will be at level 13, but effect 1, when an invigorated ally is hit, she will heal the ally for 11.5% of Bailu's max HP, plus a 111 flat HP amount. And then effect 2, when an ally is knocked down, Bailu will heal them for 32.3% plus 254 flat HP. The second effect can only be triggered once, but it's a revive, so I guess that makes sense for balancing purposes. Just something to keep in mind, you know, you can't revive everyone. I think it extends up to 2 times with eidolons, so we'll cover that as well. But yeah, just keep in mind the Invigorate mechanic comes from her talent, applied by her ult and technique. Now, her base kit. So Bailu's normal attack, Diagnostic Attack. Bailu deals lightning damage equal to 130% of her attack to a single enemy. This is the only damage in her kit. You're not going to worry about it, you're not going to think about it. It's basically there to be used when everyone's all healed up and you just want to start generating skill points. Her skill, Singing Among Clouds, is a skill that will heal a single ally, so a targeted ally, for a flat value of 142 HP plus 18.4% of Bailu's max HP at level 13. Additionally, she will then heal a single ally 2 more times with a 15% decay on the heal each time it's triggered. The additional healing is random, so while you can select the single target of the first half of the skill, you don't get control of the second part of the skill, and so it can just retarget the same allies. It's random. Her ultimate, Leap of Marsh Drakon, has an energy cost of 100, so it's not too high. Bailu will heal all allies for 20.2% of her max HP, plus a flat amount of 160. Her allies will either become invigorated, or if they already are invigorated, they will have their invigoration extended by 1 turn, so keep that in mind, because also her technique, Saunter in the Rain, when she starts a battle with the technique, All allies are invigorated for 1 turn. Something to bear in mind if you're against content that maybe would deal a preemptive strike against you. You could get some counter healing for free because a technique could be applied, something will hit you, and then bear in mind that she can then heal those allies when an invigorated ally is hit, if you remember in her talent. Her kit then, in my opinion, nothing too fancy, it's just healing. Exactly what you'd expect from a healer. So with Bailu's base kit covered, let's jump into traces. Now, her traces are all really simple. The minor traces / stat boosts are leaning into survivability. Let's start with her basic attack trace, the Chi Huang Analects. It's going to give a 10% max HP increase to a healed ally when she overheals, so healing past their maximum HP will give them a 10% max HP increase. Her skill trace, the Vidyadhara Geoveins, it allows invigoration to trigger an extra time, just basically helping you keep it on your allies. And her third major trace, so Aquatic Benediction, her ultimate trace, it's going to add a nice 10% damage mitigation buff to allies who are invigorated. I quite like this trace, to be honest. And then across her minor traces we have 22.5% to her defense, a 28% increase to her HP, and then a 6.7% to her effect resistance, which, like I said at the start, lends itself to her survivability. Her traces aren't that complicated, they just improve her slot efficiency, with the skill trace and the major trace kind of leaning into keeping invigoration on your allies and being a bit more effective. Now, I've said this in every video so far, standard eidolons are going to be basically impossible to work towards because the odds are stacked against you. With that said, the gacha machine does like to bless, depending on who you are, people with multiple copies of the same character. So, for those people who do get multiple copies of Bailu, let's cover her eidolons. Her E1, the Meridian Infusion Ambrosial Aqua. If a target ally's current HP is equal to their maximum HP when the invigoration ends, so if they are fully healed when they're no longer invigorated, Bailu will regenerate 8 energy for this target. I do like this one, but you know, it's very situational. They have to be full healed and then have no invigoration on them that turn because it's just ended. E2, Pot of Slumbering Dragon. After ulting, she will increase her healing to allies by 15% for 2 turns. Her E3 and E5 are the usual level increases to ult, skill, talent, and normal attack. Very low priority for her, in my opinion, based on the percentage increases. Her E4, Menace Exercised. When she heals an ally, the recipient will deal 10% more damage for 2 turns, stacking up to 3 times. So a total of a 30% DPS increase if you can keep healing the same ally, but bear in mind she doesn't heal with her normal attack, and then her skill retarget is random, so it's not something that you would ever maybe structure a rotation around trying to get that 30% DPS increase. It's probably only ever going to be like a nice 10 to 20%. Finally, her E6, the revival on her ultimate can now trigger a second time, letting her revive 2 allies per battle or the same ally twice. Overall, her eidolons for a healer are kind of what I would expect, especially for a standard character. I mean, the priority for me is kind of E1, then E6, and then E2/E4 in terms of usefulness, but they're all just nice to have, so there's nothing here that makes her super broken. You know, oh, you need to get E6. I wouldn't recommend any eidolons on her if you could must pull for them. They're just kind of a bit more slot efficient. With her kit covered though, let's talk builds, that being light coins and relics, so that your Bailu is equipped and geared out ready to heal at max efficiency. As always, I'm going to start with light cone section and then follow this with relics. Let's get into it. Right off the bat, Bailu can take advantage of a 3-star light cone, Cornucopia, which at refinement 1 will increase her outgoing healing by 12%, rising up to 24% at max refinement, and as a 3-star, it has a max ascension of 952 HP, which is a stat we're going to want to stuff on Bailu for maximum healing efficiency. I would skip the other 3-star option, Fine Fruit and Multiplication on Bailu, as her playstyle doesn't benefit from these, but it's nice to know that she does have a 3-star light cone that she can make use of. Now, for 4-star weapons, my recommendation would be any of the 3 options we have in the game if you manage to have one. So, Warm Nights Won't Last will increase her max HP by up to 20% at max refinement and also heal all allies by 2% of their, and it's not Bailu's, but it's their maximum HP. The main focus here being the increase to her own max HP, which her kit scales within. Then there's Post-Op Conversation, Natasha's signature weapon. It increases Bailu's energy regeneration by 8% and increases outgoing healing of the ultimate by 24%. I feel like she gets the least value out of this 4-star option because she has a 100 energy ult, but it's still pretty nice to have on her. And then Shared Feeling, the third 4-star option, is going to increase her outgoing healing by 10% and regenerate 2 energy for all allies every time she uses her skill. Shared Feeling may be edged slightly forward than Warm Nights depending on the content, but like I say, all 3 4-star options play fine with me. And then finally, for 5-star options, we do have her signature weapon. If you somehow double down on Bailu and then get her weapon, you'll have Time Waits for No One, which will give an increase to her max HP by 12% and increase outgoing healing by 12%. Then, when she heals an ally, the game snapshots the amount of outgoing healing, and when the ally launches attack, so the one that was healed, a random enemy takes additional lightning damage equal to 50% of the outgoing healing's value once per turn. It's also got a nice 1270 HP at max ascension. Now, to be honest, I wouldn't personally go for the 5-star weapon with intention because Bailu performs fine with the 3/4 star options we have. I do think it's good to future-proof your character, but you have to remember that with this weapon specifically, Bailu can only heal up to the maximum recipient's max HP, and it's not like you get a never-ending bank of overheals other than the 10% increase from her major trace. But also this randomized lightning damage just feels way too situational to derive any real concrete benefit, and honestly, I would just run with the lower investment options, the 3-star/4-star options. You'll be fine. I don't love this weapon. Now with light cones covered, let's do relics. So far we've learned that Bailu is a healer, she scales with HP, so we're going to want to prioritize her HP stats and outgoing healing percent where possible. Now, to keep things simple, I'm going to recommend a really simple major and minor set for her like I did in my Himiko guide, plug, as I feel that straying away from the path too much with artifact effects just isn't worth it for Bailu. So for her major set, the 4-piece set, I'm going to go with a passerby of Wanering Clouds. It's going to be my go-to set for Bailu because the 2-piece effect gives you an increase to your outgoing healing by 10%, while the 4-piece is going to recover you a skill point at the start of a battle, giving her some good overall team-wide efficiency. I'm mainly focused on the 2-piece, to be honest. And then for her planetary ornaments on her minor set, I'm recommending the Fleet of Ageless on her, as the effects will increase her max HP by 12%, while also having the potential to boost all allies' attack by 8% when she reaches a speed stat of 120. Now, I have seen some people recommend the Sprightly Von Wacht, which will give her an energy regen rate increase by 5% and an advance forward at the start of the battle if her speed's 145. To be honest, I don't really get this set on her. Maybe I'm missing something, but her ultimate cost isn't that high at 100, and you don't need it up 24/7 because she has her targeted skill healing. The advance forward needs a heavier speed investment since she's base 98 speed. That might be harder to hit for some people, and then the odds that you'll need to heal a ton at the start of the fight is throwing a bit. I would honestly just recommend Fleet of Ageless for the minor set. For stat recommendations, HP, like body, HP, everything, HP percent. Right, so with light cones and relics done, this now means we're onto team comps, or team synergy as I like to call it. Bailu is a healer in the abundance path, which means you won't typically build a team around her. That's because what you actually want to do with Bailu is look at main slot efficiency and then the content you're up against, as you won't always need a healer, especially if you're steamrolling through certain content before it can damage you. Additionally, some characters / enemies might prefer a tank over a healer, and then depending on, you know, for example, if you see my Yanqing or Himiko guide, I usually swap in Natasha depending on what team I'm running, but also bearing in mind the content and the character itself. Now, you can do teams for Bailu, which I will cover in a second, but I'm actually going to speak on what Bailu does over Natasha, our free-to-play option healer, first, before going into team synergy. So firstly, in her kit, Bailu has a revive. It's a skill that Natasha doesn't possess. However, Natasha does have a removal of 1 debuff in her major trace when she uses her skill. This isn't locked to trigger once per turn. If you've got an enemy that's hitting you with a lot of boons, Natasha might be the more advantageous option over Bailu. Additionally, by virtue of being a 5-star, Bailu's modifiers and flat HP healers are higher than Natasha's, but you need to remember that the ceiling here is at the recipient's HP due to the lack of overhealing available. Their techniques do differ quite heavily, as Bailu will invigorate an ally with her unique mechanic and heal preemptive strikes where applicable through her talent, but Natasha's technique on the other hand will deal some physical damage to an enemy and weaken them, causing the enemy to deal 30% less damage for 1 turn. So on paper, Natasha screams like a more useful technique, but Bailu and applying the invigorate at the start of the battle makes her kit more efficient, and to be honest, it's probably the more efficient way to go, because the invigorate effect is a kind of battle long effect that you can take advantage of. Natasha is of the abundance path, so there's no direct weapon comparisons to be made. Whatever you want to run on Natasha, you could run on Bailu and vice versa. On review, you can see why content specific will actually determine which type of character you bring for your healer slot. All this considered way before we even considered whether you want a tank as well or instead in that slot. So when thinking of team comps, as you can see, it's a little difficult to start wheeling out team members for Bailu to slot into as permanent recommendations. However, I do have some nice team ideas for you because I'm just a great person. So in a fictitious let's create a team comp for Bailu. For slot 2, I'd like to recommend pairing Bailu up with March 7th. This is because she has the aggro drawing effect. It's interesting because you could actually direct damage to Bailu because she has so much HP on her with the way we've built her. It's just some overall good slot utility efficiency, but then you'll need to remember that damage will be lacking on this team comp, being so support heavy in slot 1 and 2. So when thinking of damage dealers for slot 3, I'm going to pull in some single target damage dealers, either our free to play option Dan Heng, just because he's a staple single target damage dealer, but you could also gap this up with yanqing, because yanqing's going to benefit from March the 7th aggroing damage onto your healer, because the way that yanqing's kit works, and I've done a video on this, he can maintain his kit efficiency by not being hit by an enemy, and then if he is hit, at least Bailu can heal him up. We also have Arlen, who's an interesting 4-star slot for your damage dealer here, because his skill causes him to lose 15% of his HP to deal a ton of damage, and his talent boosts all of his damage for every percent of HP that's missing. He can't use his skill if he has less than 15% health though, so where Bailu comes into this is that she can give him just enough sustain through her healing, while not always needing to party-wide heal with virtue of her skill. Given that Arlen likes to hover on lower HP as well, Bailu's revival is a good candidate for team efficiency here, as if he's knocked down, and also the double lightning element helps with certain content who would have a lightning weakness. When doing team composition, for slot 4 you can always go for more damage, so thinking AoE roles, Herta or Saval as good free to play options, everyone's going to be really fun, or you could also gatch it up to someone like Himiko or Jingwan, just one of your erudition characters who can complement your output abilities, where we're currently lacking in overall offensive abilities. Now, you can go into offensive support here instead, as well as using a character who boosts your damage dealer. So let's say you want to double down on your Dan Heng, yanqing, Arlen role, and using someone like Asta or Tingyun, but you'll want to watch that with triple support here, you're going to be borderline overkill for most content, so definitely something to be wise of. I mean, using Bailu in team comps is really easy because, like I say, she's a healer. You kind of slot her into teams, you don't really make teams around her, so just thinking practically, as long as you have some source of damage, and then you tailor the other team members to keep that damage dealer alive, so Bailu, and then maybe a tank if need be, and then supplementing that damage, so AoE damage or offensive utility. Overall, Bailu is a great 5-star character, and the thing with healers is that they're less likely to be power crept in my opinion over something like a damage dealer, because healing's a mechanic that's pretty straightforward, you just heal people. If I was to pull Bailu, I'd be pretty happy investing resources into her, especially in addition to Natasha, because they both offer different slot efficiencies as their healer role, and she slots well into any team that does require healing. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something about Bailu's kit. If you did, please feel free to leave a like or subscribe. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.